Do not adjust your digital device. What you are about to see and hear may shock and appall you. Join our hosts as they encounter countless thrills, spills, chills, and hilarity as they explore the very weirdest in pop culture. The following media is so strange, so beyond the scope of what is normal, it will make you ask the question, why does this exist? Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris.
And I'm Rob.
And we are back for a little bit. We are going to be changing up the format a little bit. We have noticed that people seem to enjoy when we talk about music more than anything. And in our quest to actually make money on this thing and up our YouTube subscriptions, we're going to be doing more music stuff. But we're going to stick to the same general topics where we just talk about whatever it is. So that part is not going away. We are just going to be doing more musical episodes. So we're going to be talking about more bands, artists,
genres,
yes. And anything else that's kind of going into it. So we might even talk about modern production versus old school production. That might be a really interesting thing.
That would be a great one to discuss.
Yeah. So stay tuned. We got a bunch of things, but so it'll be more like, I don't know, if we do 4 a month in a great month, let's just say 2 episodes will be music based and 2 will be other. So like a TV and a movie or a TV and a video game, but the other 2 will be music. So now that you know that, what is this show? It's a show that talks about weird stuff in pop culture. That could be anything. So we will be doing some things on request. You just be nice about it and wait your damn turn. We're not making a shit ton of money, but if you want to do that, there's ways to actually help us out.
Make it easy. We're not making a Western here.
Yeah, those are in the YouTube descriptions, so you can, and I think it's in the Spotify stuff too. So you can do all that, like buy us coffee or Patreon or all these other things.
Or you can pay us $10,000 and we'll be forced to review Lulu, the most horrible Lou Reed Metallica album ever created.
Thankfully, it's the only one.
Yes.
So there is also that, if you're feeling springy and splurgy because you work for a private equity company and you are ruining this country, but you also have squillions of dollars that you just need to throw away. So why not pick a charitable cause like us?
Yes.
All right. Anyway, without further ado, that's the news. Here's the weather. You are now about to witness the true strength of street knowledge from a ragtag group of rogues. So let's get on with the goddamn show. We didn't even say what we were talking about.
No, we didn't. This is one of the episodes that's not going to be about music. And last week, if you guys listened, we also did John Cena's storied career ender.
Well, his botched retirement tour. We'll put it that way.
So we're going to talk about a movie today, which is a really good movie and
real encouraging.
Yes.
It's a good movie. By the way, look over there.
Yeah. No. So, wow, we botched this whole intro, haven't we? Jesus.
I don't think so. I don't think so. The people can see what it is. They click the episode. They already know.
Click the episodes. They already know that we're talking about John Wick.
Yes, John motherfucking Wick.
So, we talked about if we were going to just talk about the franchise in general or the first movie or what, and we decided we're just going to talk about the first movie on this episode, which obviously started the franchise. And so for those who don't know, I'll just go a little bit over an overview. John Wick is an action franchise that started with the title movie in 2014. It's since had 3 sequels and 2 spin-offs. And a number of other tie-ins, comic books, all that shit. Surprisingly, not a video game, as far as I know.
I'm surprised.
I would think you would think John Wick would be like perfect for like some kind of like action shooter or first-person shooter video game, but they haven't created one, which is interesting.
We don't really have a defining one for these newer consoles too. So this would be the perfect opportunity for some John Wick video games that kind of dive a little bit more into the lore, and maybe even you get, well, I haven't seen the other John Wick movies just yet, so I don't know how far into his backstory they get, but a
Yes.
video, if they don't get too far, a video game would be the perfect way to help put that together and set that up, as long as the game is done well.
Well, you know, if we talk, John Wick is his backstory is that he was a hitman for the Russian mafia. He was a very, very talented hitman for the Russian mafia. He decides to retire from that life. He marries a woman, and he wants to try to live, you know, a normal, happily after life. Unfortunately, his wife passes away, um, and I believe it's explained that she had some kind of disease in the movie. If I remember, I watched it a couple of months ago. Um,
I want to say it's cancer or something
yes,
terminal. They might
yes.
just allude that it's something terminal. They don't. I
Yes.
don't know if they say specifically what it is.
Regardless, her wife knew that his wife knew that she was dying, and she got him this beagle puppy as a way to cope with the loss when she finally passes away. And so he has this puppy then, and he lives alone with this puppy, and he loves this puppy because it's reminds him of his dead wife. And so back to my original point of him being a Russian hitman, if they made a video game where you play as John Wick in his heyday, you know, doing hits in like a big open world city kind of thing, you know, I think that'd be pretty awesome. You know, make it almost kind of like what was it Sleeping Dogs, where you had the whole city of Hong Kong in Sleeping Dogs specifically, and you're this undercover cop that's trying to infiltrate the triad, and you do all these missions. Well, do the same thing, except you're you're John Wick, and you're doing all these missions for the Russian mob, and you know, assassinating people and whatnot. And I think that'd be fucking awesome. But whatever. Are we gonna get that? Who knows? That this franchise is still going strong. I think so the Continental is the prequel television series, which I believe is on Amazon Prime, and then they have a spin-off film Ballerina, which came out last year. And I believe I heard somewhere that they're making John Wick Chapter 4 or Chapter 5 rather.
Chapter. They are. They
Yes.
are. I just saw that today.
Yeah, so you know, like I said, the franchise is still going strong. But we're going to talk about the first movie, which of course started the whole thing, which came out in 2014. And John Wick, I think, is one of those movies it really kind of defined a generation, you know, a little bit because I would say for the past 20 or so years, Hollywood's been pretty lackadaisical and pretty mid. There's been really not too much good movies coming out, and especially not many original movies.
As
Um,
well as action movies. The only
yes,
action movies you really see is the Fast franchise, which has really just jumped the shark about 8 movies ago.
yes, traditional action movies because you know obviously you still have superhero movies which could be considered action, but it's kind of become a genre on its own.
And
Uh,
outside of Jason Statham, we don't really have a action star, and we don't have. But Jason Statham also stars in a bunch of different movies where the
yes,
characters are all different. We haven't had, we haven't had an action hero icon in quite some time.
no, said probably since at least the 90s. Uh,
Maybe
it's
early
it
2000s.
maybe I can't even think of one from the early 2000s really though.
I I'm
Not off the
trying
top
to
of my head.
I'm trying to think, but I'm not really sure. I mean, the closest thing I could think of is Jason Statham's Chef Chelios in Crank, just because that's
Yes.
the only one that I could think of that had more than one movie. I'm sure there are others, but
I mean,
I'm kind of drawing a blank here.
you can
Because
make an
yes, they
argument.
had you can make an argument for the Expendables, but that was a group, I
Yeah, well,
think.
that and I was gonna say you can make an argument for the James Bond franchise because obviously we've had Daniel Craig uh reprise that role several times in the last
I
10-15 years.
I wouldn't classify James Bond as I wouldn't classify that because James Bond is just it's a multi-decade long, it's a near
Yes.
century long thing. So I would kind of put James Bond into his own category, which that might be an episode for down the
Yes.
road.
Yeah. Yeah, and you could argue while there is a lot of action, it's really primarily an espionage thriller rather than a straight action movie. And various James Bonds have had differing levels of action. Some have been more, that traditional espionage thriller, while some are more like straight up action movie. And even within the same Bond era, like the Daniel Craig era, I would say Casino Royale is more of that espionage thriller where there is some action, but it's not the primary focus. Whereas, Skyfall might be more of an action movie. So it's too hard to define in that. Whereas John
Yes.
Wick is straight up, and it's an action neo noir action movie, which is an interesting combination because you don't often see that. Noir movies are oftentimes very subdued and supposed to be more kind of about the dialogue and the interactions between different characters and the mystery of it, whereas this kind of just blows right into like this world of crime and John Wick being this hardcore hitman, and there being a whole secret society of hitmen that all go, they all operate out of this hotel, the Continental, and it really builds a universe. And it's really it's a fun universe too. It's something that you haven't seen in a long time in film.
Yes, and they tend to take it in twists where you wouldn't expect either.
Yes.
And it's almost the central figures is really is for the most part Ian McShane, who runs the Continental, and
Yes.
we don't really know much about him from the first movie. And I don't know if they delve a little bit more into him in the others. I'm sure that they do. I think the
Yeah.
Continental is more about him
Yeah.
and the hotel itself. And unfortunately, Lance Reddick had passed a little bit after, I think, making John Wick or John Wick 2.
Hmm.
So we really didn't get to see as much of him as we'd like to, but he also seemed like more of like the general caretaker of the Continental itself.
Yeah, he's the
And
concierge, you could say.
yes, so he's almost the fixer for for the fixers in a way.
Yes.
But yeah, we get John Wick, who the Russian mafia ends up their nickname for him is Baba Yaga, which is the Russian word for boogeyman. But their line, of course, is when they ask him who is he, the son, who we're getting ahead of just a little bit. They ask him, he asks the father, well, who is this guy, the boogeyman? And he goes, he's the one you send to kill the fucking boogeyman.
Yes.
So this guy, you really he gets a very rare out from the mafia. So
I,
because he
I
was such a good soldier, I think they give him that exit and they just say, thanks for your service, and they don't let him live. I mean, they let him live. They don't kill him. They allow him to just retire peacefully because of the just what he's how well he's taken care of his work for them, where they leave him alone. And then of course the a bunch of stupid kids show up. They try to steal his car. He says no. They follow him home, and then they beat him. And then they beat him within an inch of his life, or they try to beat him within an inch of his life, and they kill the dog. And that just sets John off on a rampage because they don't understand the significance of any of this stuff. And it turns out that that the main kid is the idiot son of the Russian mafia crime boss,
yes.
who just basically looks at his kid and just goes, he basically does the fatherly thing where he knows that his kid is just dead and he tells him to his face, he just says, you're a goner. He's going to hunt you down and he's going to kill you and there's nothing I can do about it. But also as a father, he wants to protect his son. So even though he knows this is a fool's errand, he still does what he can to try to protect his son,
Yeah.
although he knows that it's not going to work. And
Yes.
John Wick, takes care of several hitmen, and I think he takes care of several hitmen or the some of the kids' idiot friends who think that they could just take this older guy. Where the police show up, John Wick is covered in blood in the doorway. They don't bother to go inside, and they're just
No,
like,
it's
"How
it's
are you?"
it's with that
It's
whole part, it's not just the idiot friends. The mob boss sends a hit squad to his house, knowing that this is like the only to get the jump on him is the only way to fucking try to even like subdue him, and it's probably not going to work. So It's not just like, oh, a bunch of thugs. Like, this is a fucking elite hit squad that the Russian mafia sends to John Wick's house to try to eliminate him before he becomes more of a threat. And of course, he basically pulls them apart piece by piece with ease.
And the police and the local law enforcement shows up because of the noise complaint.
Yes.
And it's just really funny because even in this world, the cops know not to fuck with John Wick at all and not to question anything that he does because they know he's a bad dude.
Yeah.
So, and just to not get involved in anything that involves him
Yes. The
unless
cop
they
even
need to
asks
cover
him.
it up.
The cop even asks him, like, John, are you working again? Like,
Yeah. So they already know what his deal is. And
yes.
he's covered in blood and he's just like, no, but everything's all right. And the police officer, he just looks at him and just says, okay, well, have a good night.
Yeah.
And he just leaves and knows better. At least they're smart enough in this world to not try to stop this.
Yeah. Well, it's like what's that movie, the town, where the cop is sitting at the construction site and he sees the guys like fucking running to the getaway car with assault rifles and the fucking nun masks on, and he looks over them and then he just looks away. He's like, I didn't see that. Sometimes, there are certain no-name characters in movies that have some semblance of self-preservation.
Yeah, it's
so
funny.
so John, the the reason how John finds out that it's the boss's son is that Yosef, who's the Russian mob boss's son, he tries to take John's car to a chop shop, uh, which is owned by Aurelio, played by John Leguizamo. And Aurelio realizes this is John Wick's car, and he's like, "Did you steal John Wick's car?" Like, are you fucking people idiots? And so basically, yeah, he's like, "Mm, this is I'm not taking this car. You're fucked," basically. And obviously John shows up at the chop shop, and Aurelio's like, yeah, it was Yosef. It was him. We also find out during this time, especially because after Vigo berates his son, uh the reason why
Vigo is the
John Wick.
name. Vigo is the name of the mob boss, by the
Yeah,
way.
yeah, Vigo is the mob boss. So the reason why he berates his son and knows that how much of a problem this is because John's last job was for Vigo. And basically, John had fallen in love with his wife at the time, or she wasn't his wife yet, but had fallen in love with this woman and wanted to leave this life of crime to go be with her. And Vigo gave him an impossible mission. Said, if you could finish this mission, you could retire, full. Which again, if you're aware of anything that happens in the world of crime, there's no retiring. As Tony Soprano put it so beautifully to Eugene Pontecorvo, Gene, you took an oath. There's no retiring from this. Uh, so the fact that John completed that mission, Vigo, that respect for like Vigo had is like, all right, this guy's fucking for real. I'm gonna let this happen and let this guy just be retire peacefully. So the fact that his own son basically killed the only piece of John's wife that was left and then stole his car. Vigo's like, yeah, now like I have to kill John because otherwise he will kill you 100%. He's going to every length to kill you, and there's nothing we can really do about it. I have to just hope that I can fucking get enough of a big enough army to stop this guy before he gets to you.
Yeah, and he then puts a $2 million bounty on his head, and
Yes.
even then is not going to happen.
No, and that's the thing is that most of the bounty hunters have such a respect for John Wick and know who he is that they don't even want to collect the bounty. There's one of John's friends from that life back in the day is played by Willem Dafoe as Marcus. He's a sniper. And I think at one point John even asked him, like, "Oh, are you here to collect?" And he's like, basically, like, "No, why? Like, why would I do that?" There is one person that is stupid enough to try to collect, and that's the female assassin, uh, who
Miss
is
Perkins.
Miss Perkins. Yeah, and she ends up getting her shit pushed in several times.
Yeah.
She tries, but it's yeah,
Well, when he runs into her at I believe it's the Red Circle.
yeah,
Is he? It almost there's some kind of tension between John Wick and Miss Perkins where it almost like she's just kind of moonlighting as a bartender for the time being, which is probably where she collects her intel and contracts and whatever she needs to do. That's probably where, if you want to go to if you want to get Miss Perkins for the job, you know where to find her. That's probably her venue of choice. But it almost seems like there's some kind of a sexual tension between the two of them, almost like
Yeah,
they had a history
yeah.
together, and it's possible that maybe she was madly in love with him and he ended up falling for Helen. So she almost has that kind of chip on her shoulder where that's kind of that could be the unseen motivation that makes her decide that she's going to go after him.
Hmm. Yeah. There's also this unwritten rule that they don't do business at the Continental, which she breaks. Which which basically means they don't do business at the Continental. You don't kill anybody that's in the Continental or staying at the Continental because it's like
Right.
they're supposed to be their safe house. It's supposed to be the safe house for all of this society of the criminal underworld and these hitmen and hit women. Or are we trying to be PC? Hitmen and
Hit
hit women,
people, hit
hit
folk.
people, hit folk, button men. I don't know.
Button men. The button
Uh,
folk. The button folk.
button folk. Yeah. So and of course Miss Perkins breaks that when she tries to attack John. And
In his
that's just
hotel room.
yes. Um. So basically, John is essentially a Terminator. Like, let's face it, the guy's basically fucking invincible. He just the tactics that he employs and the fact that he could just like brush off getting shot several times and beaten and he just is basically a Terminator. So Vigo knows that his son is fucked, but he has to, being the Russian mob boss, still has to try to do something to protect him. So Vigo or Yosef goes to
I
this
mean,
bathhouse.
it also would look terrible for him as the
Yes,
criminal, as the boss. It would look bad on his character. It would reflect badly on his character, and he would also lose a lot of respect in the criminal world. They might view him as weak, and that could open him up to some kind of turf war just or some enemy who's just looking to take over. Then they might see that as an opportunity. So he has to do something. Whether he
yes.
wants to or not, he has no choice but to do something for several reasons.
Uh, so John goes to this bathhouse that's owned by the Russian mob, which I believe is part of the Red Circle nightclub. And basically goes on a fucking rampage and kills all the men. Actually, one of the bouncers, I believe, knows John and just says, "Oh, okay, I'm just gonna like walk the other way." Again, like I know better. I'm just gonna look the other way on this.
Again,
Um,
establishing just how revered and feared John Wick
yes,
is.
yes. Uh, so
Plus I'm sure everyone knows that he's been retired. So for him to show up again, they're probably like, "Oh, something bad happened and something very bad is going to happen to someone and to someone else."
yeah. Uh, so Miss Perkins reveals that Vigo's got this stash of money and blackmail material at this church, and that's basically where he's keeping it. It's his secure vault essentially, uh, because it's a church, and who would search a church for criminal materials, basically. Uh, so John goes again on this assault as like basically a Green Beret, and burns the fucking money and destroys all the blackmail material and uh a big fight erupts, big firefight erupts. He starts winning, but then gets hit by the car. And so they capture John. And John obviously tells him that he won't stop until his son's dead because, you know,
He's got to
it's
square things off and
exactly.
avenges the puppy, which essentially his wife in a way.
Yes.
Actually, the
Uh
bouncer is portrayed. Kevin Nash is the bouncer at the Red Circle nightclub.
yes, yes he is. So Marcus helps John and snipes Kirill, who is one of the henchmen of Vigo, and so uh Vigo, and then Marcus also threatens Vigo into revealing the location of the safe house where Yosef is, so that way John could actually go do what he has to do. So John does that. He goes to the safe house and he kills Yosef, and Marcus Marcus like basically tells him, all right, your mission's done. Go back to go back to what your life now. You're done. You did what you had to do. But Miss Perkins sees this and reveals to Vigo that Marcus is working with John instead of like going after uh the thing who captures Marcus and has him tortured and then killed and blah blah blah. Uh which it's probably a stupid thing to do. Like they could Vigo could have said, all right, what's done is done. I can't help it. My son was a fucking idiot. He brought this on himself. Let me cut my losses and just say fuck it, and that's it. We're done. I let John go back to retirement, and everything is right with the world. That's it. But he doesn't do that. He kills Marcus, John's friend, and then taunts him about it to bring him back into the city.
As if he didn't know what was going to happen.
Exactly. Well,
He
I
let
think he knew what
he
was going to happen. He just thought he was going to win, and
yeah,
maybe he was
he
lost in
let
grief.
his well, I'm sure it was a part of grief because anger and bargaining is all part of that, and that's what he's going through now. Almost like he can try to bargain to avenge his son's death now.
Yeah.
So he's not thinking clearly, and he lets his ego get the best of him. And well, what do you think happens?
Yep. Well, let's first go that Miss Perkins gets her comeuppance because Winston
Yes,
has her executed for breaking the rules of the Continental by trying to attack John in his hotel room, which again is supposed to be a
Winston
neutral safe zone.
Winston being Ian McShane's character,
Yes.
who we only see briefly.
Yeah, he's actually one of the coolest characters in the show, or in the movie rather. I really like him a lot, and I think he has a bigger role in the later movies because I've seen clips of the later movies where he's obviously featured,
I think
which
he
is
does, and I think
awesome.
the Continental feature focuses more on him.
Yes. Which is cool because he's a really cool character. He's that the fact that he runs this secret society basically of assassins that use this hotel as like a safe house slash neutral zone, where they could talk business and not have to worry about business being done to them. Let's just
The
say.
the concept of the Continental is just really interesting in itself because
Yeah.
you never see something like that where there is somewhere where there is honor among thieves and criminals and all that other stuff where they sit there,
Yeah.
they heal, they mend their wounds, and or they just kind of take a minute to just relax and just get their get their heads in the right place,
Yeah.
and they're generally cordial where they don't where they're not going to mix they're not going to mix their business activity with just whatever they need to do at the hotel.
Yeah.
So it's very cool that they have that idea, and even where potentially there could be two hit people trying to collect a bounty, or several trying to collect a bounty on someone staying at the Continental, and in theory they would have to honor that code, so they could run into each other and get coffee
Yeah.
right in the morning and just get breakfast and just say, all right, well, this was really good, I'm glad we get to catch up, but I'm gonna leave. I'm checking out of here in about 20 minutes. So we'll have to go back to being enemies. Almost like the Sam and Ralph cartoons of the Sam and Ralph Warner Brothers cartoons where it's the dog and the wolf, I believe, right? Is it a
Yes.
wolf or a dog?
Yeah, I
Or
believe
is it
it's a
a cat?
or no, I believe it's a wolf and a dog because he's protecting the farm or the chickens from like the wolf, but
She's
they're
a
like
sheepdog.
or yeah, and they're secretly friends. Yeah.
Yeah. So whenever as soon as they punch out, they hang out. But then when they have to punch in and go to work, they do their things where he has to chase the wolf and stop him from getting the sheep. So that's basically that's basically I think that's the best analogy I could come up with for the Continental. Where, all right, I'll give you an hour head start, and then I'll come find you. All right, well, I'll see you later. If hey, if we're both alive, you want to just come back here for beers tomorrow, and then we could do this again until one of us dies, kind of the
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. Um, so we set up this giant
I bet it's
final showdown.
expensive.
What, the Continental?
Yeah, I bet it's really expensive to
Well, they
stay
have
there.
those gold coins, which are like implied to be some kind of tokens that they use to do whatever they have to do with the Continental. So I'm assuming those gold, it's some kind of like agreed upon currency that these hitmen use to buy whatever they need there. And I don't know how they acquire that, if it's like some kind of special payment that they get for doing special missions, or if they have to exchange, what's the exchange rate on that, if they have to buy these gold coins.
I'm sure
uh
whatever it is obtained through the black market, or if there's some kind of dark web that's specific to that world.
yeah, yeah. uh Vigo, or John goes back in to attack Vigo, and there's this big showdown at the harbor, and Vigo's trying to escape on this helicopter, and of course, a big fight breaks out. His henchmen are attacking John. John fights back. He mortally wounds Vigo finally, and but he gets wounded too. And actually, the movie starts out with this scene of him wounded, and getting out of this vehicle that crashes. It rolls out. He rolls out. He's got gunshot wounds, and then he's watching a video of his a wife, Helen, on the phone, telling him that they need to go home, basically. And at this point, you don't know what the context of it is in the beginning of the movie. All you see is, okay, John Wick is dying. What's happening. So we finally get it in context that there was this huge battle and he's wounded, and he resigns himself to dying from his injuries. He's like, all right, I did what I had to do. I've lost everything basically that mattered to me. The only thing that I had left was the dog, who's dead. But I avenged everything, and what's done is done, and now I'm gonna pick my the masculine urge to find a great bleed out spot and and just to bleed out. But the video of his wife kind of inspires him, and he breaks into like a vet's office nearby, and steals the supplies to treat his wounds, and then he adopts this pit bull puppy, and leaves, and that's the end of the movie.
The pit bull
Uh,
was scheduled to be euthanized too,
yeah,
so he saves that. So he almost well, so there's some kind of a symbolism there where in the beginning the dog kind of saves his life, and now he saves the dog's life.
and kind of vice versa too. I think that this dog also saves his life, because or maybe it's the video of his wife telling him, go home, like, move on, I think, and live, be, don't just die on the side of the road, because
Yes.
you know
It's a very it's a very interesting movie about grief and loss
yes, yeah, no,
and
100%.
healing, because all of the aggression is him healing,
Yeah,
which is also the motivation for him to be an unstoppable killing machine.
yes. And obviously there's this whole concept of the anti-hero, and person that's not necessarily a good person, but you root for him because you know like John Wick is yeah, okay, he's a cold-blooded killer. It's like his job. He was a hitman for the Russian mafia, but at the same time he's got these endearing qualities, and he just wants to live this normal life. And he I guess it's trying to say, like, the power of, like, love, and what a man would do for his lady. The fact that he gave up this life that's almost impossible to give up. And he literally basically moved mountains to be with this woman. It just shows, like, he really isn't a horrible person, I guess. I it's hard to say that, oh yeah, John Wick is just a cold-blooded killer, he's a piece of shit, and he's, whatever. Okay, yeah, he is a murderer for his job, but he has a code of honor that he follows. He he has connections, and he wants to leave the life. and you know, obviously he probably had some kind of past trauma that drove him to the life of crime that he led before. Uh, but you know, he's trying to redeem himself, obviously. And you know, it's funny because Keanu Reeves tends to play a lot of characters that are like that are not really great people, but are like end up trying to redeem themselves. You know, he was obviously in the Devil's Advocate. You could say John Constantine is also another example of that. Um, Not so much Neo. Neo's not really trying to redeem himself,
Yeah,
but
Neo is kind of just a guy who gets dragged into this all of this chaos.
yeah,
And he's basically he's the savior of a prophecy that he never wanted to be part of.
yes. Which also, if you read into the deep lore of the Matrix, is a fake prophecy that is made up by the machines to keep humans under control. So,
Wow.
so the
Did not
fact
know
that
that.
yes, yeah, well, I mean, they kind of talk about it in the movie where you know the architect of the Matrix says, you know, we've destroyed Zion 6 times before this, and so your role as the one is to go through this door, save this many people that are going to rebuild Zion after we destroy it.
And then
That's like
just
literally
raise
his
it.
only role. Yeah, and
Huh.
Neo was the first one, quote unquote, to actually say no, I'm not doing that. And he walks out the other door because he wants to go save Trinity, who's dying.
I'll have to
So
watch those again. It's
yeah,
been a very long time. I think the only time that I really saw them was when they all came out in theaters.
yeah. The prophecy of the one is yeah, like I said, it's created by the machines as a means of control over humans. You know, the humans need to feel that they can rebel, basically. Otherwise, their crops fail because
Mm.
you know they realize that they're being controlled.
Yeah, which in that itself, the movie is a very well, that whole series is just about is a really interesting take on is there truly meaning in life?
Yes.
Is and religion being a construct? It questions religion being a construct, and also just if you want to just take a look into just all the ancient stories of all the gods and everything, and you want to look at the history of the world as we know it, there are signs that point to history that the world being reset several times. We do know that the ice age happened and that the meteors that created the ice age had occurred. So it is possible that the world has reset itself several times. And
Yeah.
the poles have also been reversing where global warming is the term that we have for it, but it's something that's happened many times before that we
Yeah.
just don't have a record of.
Yes, because there was natural disasters that destroyed everything. Yeah.
Right, which I mean, if you go into all of the if you want to go into every religious text, the things that they have in common are giants and
The flood
the flood.
and dragons, really, too.
Oh, yes.
Uh, but I digress. Back because
That's my line.
John Wick is not so deep as that.
No. No, it
but
is not.
but there are still a lot of like interesting themes at play here. And the fact that they did this again in a time where there's really not many original movies coming out. Most if not all of the movies that are in theaters pretty much are either based on a book or a comic book or something. So it was John Wick is a breath of fresh air in I think in the current like structure of Hollywood.
Yes.
Especially
And
since like half the shit that comes out is so bad now and John Wick is just so good. A lot of that I credit to Keanu Reeves' performance. Um because he really went all out for this and there's videos online of him training for this role back when he first got it and he took this role as seriously as anything else despite the fact that it's just an action movie where he plays a hitman. He went through training and you know you could see there's videos of him doing pistol drills
well,
and assault rifle drills and he went all out on this
well,
movie.
he trained in now he already had some previous martial arts experience, but
Yes, yes,
he trained in judo,
yes.
Brazilian jiu-jitsu, I'm sorry, Japanese jiu-jitsu as well,
Hmm.
arnis, and he and his gun training was with the Los Angeles SWAT teams and the Navy SEALs.
Yes.
And he also learned various stunt driving skills too, like drifting the car while aiming the gun. That's all him. So that
Yeah.
also really helped. But they and they had also had him they also had him try out a bunch of different outfits. They had him grow out his hair and a beard for the role, which I think also helps describe which I also think helps set up the type of man that he is, where he's at a loss in a few ways, and not just like he looks like someone who has been going through a rough time, who has been grieving. And I think there's also, it's not just loss, but there's also an existential crisis that he's going through as someone who was a hitman for all these years and built up this insane reputation in the underworld, and also has this legend that grows to him as being the one guy who actually got out.
Yeah.
And
There and
so
I there's a there's
there's this underlying thing of, what do I do when I retire? And now that I don't have anything, what do what do I do now? Kind of a thing, like the what next thing, which is something that, you know, which is something that a lot of people in America who do retire, and I mean possibly the rest of the world, but I think it's a bigger problem in America, because in America, people's identities, they tie them so much to their work and their occupation that when they actually retire, if they're able to, they go through this they go through this crisis, and a lot of people do not live much very long into their retirement years, because they don't know what to do, and they have this crazy identity crisis, and the spirit suffers over it. I mean, that's a problem in itself, because you shouldn't tie your identity to your work. You should tie your identity to everything outside of it. Your work is the thing that you do for money that you may or may not really like,
Mhm.
where everything that the major corporations haven't stolen from you in terms of time, that's who you really are. Your hobbies, who you hang out with, do you have a family? That's who you really are.
Yeah.
What else do you do? Do
Yeah.
you do you do stand-up comedy on the weekends? Do you do you like to just follow bands on tour? What do you like to do? Do you play an instrument? What exactly is your thing, and who are the people you surround yourself with? That's who you are. And a lot of people disconnect that. Like, you go to a party, and the first question that most people will ask you as an icebreaker is, what do you do? Not meaning, what do you do as a person? What do you like to do? Are you a fan of modern art? Which that's a touchy subject. Modern art
Yeah.
is a strange beast, but I digress. You they're mean, they just want to know what you do for work so that you could talk about work, even though you're not working. So that further reinforces that. That's also an issue that starts in the education system, which only trains you to be an obedient worker and not a person, which is wrong. um but anyway, I've kind of gone on a tangent there, but my point is that the theme is, while the main overarching theme is grief and loss, the other theme, another underlying theme, is existential crisis, and another is also the dynamic between a father and son. Because
Mhm.
how many dads who have had a teenager or adult son have just looked over at somebody and just said, "Oh God, my son's a fucking idiot." every I'm sure every father at some point or another has and or will say that about their son.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that their kid is an idiot, but they may have just made a poor choice in the
Yes.
moment, where you're just like, what is wrong with my son? I have to do something.
Has Papa Butera thought that about you?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure many times. And vice versa, where the son will just, with all of his piss and vinegar and hubris, will just think they're untouchable because,
Yes.
well, youth is wasted on the young. So how
Yeah.
many sons have just received advice from their dad, or have just done something stupid, and their father has given them the lecture, and they've just said, "My dad's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I'll be fine."
Yeah.
Meanwhile, exactly what your dad told you was going to happen to you ends up happening to you, and you're kind of mesmerized, and you're just like, and you're not even thinking, wow, my dad was right. You're just thinking, well, this is bullshit. How could this happen to me? Where, years later, unless you're Vigo's son, years later you think back and you just say, "Wow, my dad was actually right. I was that was pretty stupid," and then you can laugh about it.
Yeah.
And I guess the other theme is the good old bond that you can make between like a dog being man's best friend, I
Yeah.
suppose, and of course the power of love.
I think there's a good I mean Keanu Reeves personally had a lot of trauma in terms of that too, where his first, I guess, serious well, one of his serious girlfriends, Jennifer Syme, they had gotten together in 1998, and she gave birth to their son, or I don't know if it was a son or a daughter, but the child was stillborn, and they
Oh,
later broke up.
no, it was a daughter. It
It
was
was
a
a daughter, okay.
daughter.
Um, and they later broke up over that, and they eventually reconciled, but Jennifer Syme was killed shortly after that in a car accident. Um, and he was a pallbearer at her funeral, and I think it was, I mean, if you read Keanu Reeves' story, it's such a like what the hell happened to this poor guy? Like he's one
Ex-
of like the most nicest, most humble actors, and the guy just gets freaking like slammed left and right in his personal life, like by like tragedy. Um,
But he
and the fact that
perseveres through all of it. That's the
yeah,
craziest thing, is it would
yes,
break so many people where they wouldn't know what to do with themselves.
yes,
And it really, you gotta hand it to the guy. He's really made the best out of so many
yes.
bad situations.
He's very much the kind of guy who's like, this is the hand I'm dealt, and what can I do? I got to deal with it. I can't, you know.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think he puts a lot of that into his characters, especially John Wick. Though I think, uh, John Wick is basically Keanu Reeves playing himself, at least emotionally. Obviously, he's not a freaking a hitman, but
As far
uh,
as we know.
yeah. Um, I would hope not, because
I
he
hope
seems
not
like such a
too.
cool dude.
He seems too good for that. He
Yeah,
he seems like he'd be one of the nicest guys in the business.
he's breathtaking.
Yes. We also used to know a guy named Dan Barlecamp, who was a drummer in one of the bands that I was in, and he bore a resemblance to Keanu Reeves facially, and he
Yes.
hated it. I think the one time that I saw him, one time that I saw him, I forget who it was. I thought that he looked like a different celebrity, and he was just sitting at the drum kit, and there was it was either another musician or somebody else. I wasn't even thinking of Keanu Reeves, and I said, "Hey, you know who you look like?" And he goes, "Oh, let me guess, Keanu fucking Reeves." And I was like, "No, I mean, now that you mention it, I guess so. What is it?" He's like, "Oh, well, here we fucking go. Every time I go, he's like, I have to go." He's like, "You know what's been following me around my whole life? Oh, Keanu fucking Reeves. I go all the way to Pennsylvania to go to school. You know what I get on my first day when I move into the dorm? Not, oh, hey, how are you? Not, hi, what's going on? Hey, cool shirt. No, I get, hey, you know what? You look like fucking Keanu Reeves." He's and I looked at him and I just said, "But he's supposed to be really nice." And he just says, "Yeah, well, I don't give a shit. This guy's caused me more grief than I can imagine. So fuck him." So Dan, if you're listening, I hope you feel a little bit better about this sort of thing. But
I mean, to be
I
fair, he
am
does look a lot like Keanu Reeves. It is like
he,
uncanny.
he does, and I understand his pain. But honestly, if there's a celebrity that you're gonna be a lookalike of, well, I guess Keanu Reeves is a pretty good choice.
Yeah, I'd rather look like Keanu Reeves than fucking like some of the other fucking scumbags that are in Hollywood, honestly. At least the guy's like pretty fucking, by all accounts, is like one of the actually more legit fucking dudes in Hollywood, and it's pretty cool. So I mean, if you're gonna be compared to somebody, better that than anything, right?
Oh, I would have liked it if people said I bore a striking resemblance to Gilbert Gottfried, but that's me.
Um,
All you have to do is squint and talk like this, kids. A
Flat.
man, a man goes into the Continental. Miss Perkins shows up. He does not come out.
But what a great movie, and a great franchise that it started. And I think really kind of gave us a renaissance of Keanu Reeves a little bit. Uh, he's been in obviously he's been in a lot of movies over the years, but I think this really kind of like put him on the map of being like a really cool um I don't know. I feel like he for a long time he wasn't doing like too many great good movies, and it kind of like put him back into like, okay, he is actually like a legit actor that could actually do something and has some kind of range beyond just like going whoa. So
Yes. This
yeah,
this whole franchise rejuvenated his career.
yes. And of course, now he's been in. He stars as Johnny Silverhand in the Cyberpunk game.
He
Cyberpunk
played
2077,
he was Shadow. He was the voice of Shadow the Hedgehog in the most
voice of
recent
Shadow.
Sonic movie,
Yep.
which I thought was just okay. I thought his voice was right. The performance was a little flat for me, but I still thought that it was pretty cool, and he did sound right. So I
Yeah.
understand why they cast him.
Yeah.
I but I think towards the end of the movie he gets better because they have a character arc change
Yeah.
for Shadow. And I don't know if they're gonna I know they're planning to do a fourth Sonic movie where they're gonna feature Amy and some of the other characters. So we'll see more of Shadow's growth. I know there's a Knuckles spin-off show, but I don't know if Shadow is involved in it or if he's getting his own spin-off or what. I don't
Mhm.
have Paramount or anything, so I can't say.
There was rumors. I mean, it was more fan speculation than anything. That they were going to cast Keanu Reeves as Revan in a Knights of the Republic movie.
Oh,
Obviously, I don't think that's gonna happen, but it was always like the biggest. Like the fans really wanted it, and I think it would be cool.
it would
I
be
think
cool to see him as a Jedi Master
yeah,
or Sith Lord.
yeah. So I think that would be a cool thing. I don't think they're gonna make a Knights of the Republic movie. Disney has botched the whole Star Wars franchise so much they can't make anything cool out of it
Yes,
anymore.
and even though Kathleen Kennedy is finally out, she has done so much damage that it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, they would basically have to do a full 100% restart like they did when they purchased Star Wars and originally, and basically say everything that came from then till now is non-canon, and we're restarting the canon again.
And they pretty much have to delete everything and just
Yes.
take it off of the platform so that way nobody would know that it even existed. They'd
Yeah.
have to just completely wipe the legacy clean.
Yeah.
But this movie, so not only did it reinvigorate Keanu Reeves's career, but John Wick, it gave the screenwriter Derek Kolstad a new lease on life too, because he was just having a really tough time. And he was writing up to at least 8 screenplays per year, and he couldn't get anything off the ground. This guy was ready to quit. And and this is one of those famous stories where just as the person is ready to quit, it finally happens. Which that happens for a lot that which we've heard that time and time again. It's a weird thing where the universe kind of just says, "Oh, you don't care about this anymore? All right, we're going to give it to you now."
Yeah.
So make plans and God laughs, as they say. So he kept writing, but he didn't really like make it a full-time job anymore. And he just kind of, I'm sure he got some other jobs or odd jobs or just some other career while he just did it on the DL. And his wife just said, why don't you just do it? You tried hard enough. Why should you walk away from it now? What's the worst that could happen? You work a steady job and somebody still tells you no. So he does it. He writes 60 more screenplays, and then finally he starts getting some low budget action movies. He gets one in the chamber, he gets the package in 2012 and 2013. Then he writes a spec script called Scorn, which is what eventually became John Wick, where he pretty much summed it up as inspiration from two really bad revenge movies that he watched. And he
Yeah.
created John Wick, who was much older in the original concept. He was in his mid 60s to mid 70s, based on Clint Eastwood and Paul Newman. Yes, that Paul Newman who whose company makes the K cups and potato chips and just about everything else you could think of.
Newman's own pizza.
Yeah, that guy, Newman.
Yeah.
Um, so
Newman.
yeah, so he creates all these characters around it, and the concept of the constant of the Continental and and its denizens, and he then ends up changing things around. He gets the first draft. He gets inspired by a few other movies. He gets inspired by a bunch of famous movies like Alien, Predator, Die Hard, and as well as some westerns. So a bunch of Clint Eastwood stuff, some neo noir films like Miller's Crossing, and then he starts adding dark comedy into it. And then he makes all these little changes from getting family agents and general feedback, and he makes the move, and they put the script out. It gets picked up. The producer around the same time, Basil Iwanek, I think that's how you pronounce his name, I'm not sure. He was developing movies for Warner Brothers through Thunder Road Films. That was his production studio, and he couldn't really he was kind of going through like a rough patch too in his career, and he started taking a look on action films that could be just made on smaller budgets because he couldn't source scripts. They wouldn't let him do it. They just said, oh no, we'll just tell you what you're going to make. And he just looked at them and just said, no, I want to pick what I'm going to make. If I'm
Mhm.
making the movie, it should be my decision on what we're making. So he just starts looking at the action films because I guess nobody really cared about action movies at that time, and they were also pretty cheap to produce. So I'm sure if he either did it on his own or just looked at the studio and just said, "Well, if you're not going to let me take a look at the main movies that I'm going to make, well, can I just pick some of the low budget stuff and maybe, you could just give me a few you could maybe give me 1 to 2 million, we could just make that on a shoestring budget."
Mhm.
Worst case scenario, you just write it off as a loss at the end of the year. So
Yeah.
they probably just said, "Yeah, all right, why not?" So he gets a hold of Kolstad's spec script, and he thinks it's really cool. And Thunder Road eventually makes the damn movie.
Mhm.
So uh, and and Iwanek's friend. So originally they were going to get Bruce Willis as John Wick, and then when they decide to, and then they decide that they're not going to get a guy who is John Wick's original age of being much older. So they do that. Iwanek's friend is Keanu Reeves' agent at the
Mhm.
time, or maybe it still is. And it comes across Keanu Reeves's desk, and the emotional connection as well as the dynamic between the real world and the underworld draws Reeves in, and they end up making further revisions, and they go against some other suggestions like having like expanding John Wick's family and having them kill to drive the plot instead of keeping it simple,
Yeah.
which was the right move. They make the movie, and they keep rewriting the script to fit Keanu Reeves's acting style, which also makes this work too.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
no, definitely.
they make all of these revisions, and they also decided that it was important that they never gave him a real backstory, and they don't show his life before his wife passes away. So you just get little clues, and I know in they did make a small comic book series where it provides the backstory for John Wick's youth,
Yeah.
which, like we said, would be really cool to take that and turn that into
A video game.
a video game
Yeah.
or several if they wanted to try their hand at stuff like that.
And they make the final mission could be like the impossible mission, you know?
Yes. Yes, I think that would be really freaking cool. And then
Yeah.
then Bob's your uncle. They make the movie. They cast the rest of the people, and they do a kick-ass job with this thing, and we get the movie that we get. And
Mhm.
then that takes off. It spans it becomes a huge success, and then we have the whole world of John Wick that is 5 movies in, well, 4 movies in, 5 movies in if you include Ballerina, with a 6th on the way, and you have the Continental TV series, you have comic books. Hopefully, at some point, we can get a video game,
Yeah.
and it's just this thing just doesn't the train doesn't stop rolling, and it kind
Yeah.
of ushers in a I wouldn't say a new era of action films, but you start to see more action films pop up. So more
Yeah.
Jason Statham movies. I mean, outside of the Fast movies, because that was a separate animal altogether.
Yes.
And they so you start getting more offshoot Jason Statham movies, start being ordered like Beekeeper and other revenge movies like that.
Well, I
And
think it also it showed that that kind of movie is viable in today's market. People want
yes,
that. It's something original, like an original action movie, a franchise, not just, a one-off kind of thing, and not just something that's been an established franchise for decades. A new franchise with a new action hero that, maybe pushes some boundaries in terms of like moral ambiguity and stuff like that.
right. And this is also in an era where all Hollywood knew what to do. This was 2014. So I think this is around the time where you couldn't get away from zombie things.
Yes.
I think this is where everything was zombies and they just did zombies quite literally to death
Yeah.
and then
That's
some.
when The Walking Dead came out and it was big at the time, and,
Yes.
everyone was talking about The Walking Dead, and yeah,
And
so
then there were all of these other zombie movies that were popping up and you just
World War Z, which was not good at all. It didn't fucking
no,
even attempt to follow the book.
no, which is a shame because the book is so damn good.
The book is amazing.
We had a song about that
Yes, we did.
on the Zamboni album. Well,
Yes.
Nuclear
Oh,
Hatred album, if you
oh,
could find it.
you broke the well, that's it. They're coming after us now.
Oh, yeah,
You said the thing.
I forgot we got sued about that. Well, too bad. That's what happened, folks. Anyway, perhaps at some point we'll tell the story if we haven't told the story already.
We've told the story.
Okay,
I'm sure of it.
so then we won't tell the story again. We don't need to. The people have suffered enough.
Yes.
But we end up making so John Wick breaks out because of itself being different, and also here comes this, like we talked about, all these Star Wars things that just ruin Star Wars, and the Disneyfication starts rearing its ugly head, where we get way too many Marvel things that honestly we didn't need to do any more Marvel things besides Spider-Man after Endgame.
Yeah.
Just leave it after Endgame. They should have just focused on Spider-Man and for a couple more movies, and then just let it go. Maybe
Yep.
I guess maybe Guardians of the Galaxy is an exception, but that also debuted during the Endgame phase. Just let Marvel, just let the Endgame stuff happen, and maybe just do Spider-Man and I guess Deadpool and another.
Deadpool's pretty good.
Yeah, it was, and I guess another Guardians movies or two that they ended up doing, but stay away from all the other stuff. Nobody cares about Marvel anymore now because Disney's ruined that,
Yeah.
and so you have so many things that Hollywood is just doing to death, and then you have John Wick that is just flying under the radar, kicking ass and taking names, and a shit ton of money in the process.
Yeah.
So good for you, Keanu Reeves, and the whole John Wick crew. I'm glad that this is a thing.
Yeah. Me too. I agree.
So I don't really have a whole lot else to really do. Oh, actually, it turns out that there is a virtual reality first person shooter game for John
Oh,
Wick. It's
okay.
called John Wick Chronicles. And there is another one that is kind of a prequel called John Wick Hex that came out in 2019. Chronicles was 2017.
I guess they weren't too successful because I haven't heard of it, either of them.
I guess. So I'd really like to see a real one.
Yeah.
I don't know about a AAA studio making it because they'll probably fuck it up. But if you could get a really great indie studio and just give them a good budget and let them just do what they're going to do, I
Mhm.
think you'd get a really kick ass game.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And, well, I guess that's it.
I suppose so. So if
What
you
else
want
have we
to
seen?
I don't really have much else to say. I
Go
just
watch the
wanted
movie.
yes, go watch the movie, watch all the other ones too. I will check all that stuff. I'll check everything else as well. And I guess stay tuned for whatever else we got in the store. I'm sure the next couple will be some musical stuff, and then stay tuned for whatever else we end up doing. But
Yeah,
this has been Why Does This Exist? I've been Chris,
and I've been Rob.
and remember, question everything.
Good night, everybody.